Hey folks, welcome back to Failure Retirement. So you might be asking yourself, what in the world is going on here? What's Failure up to now? Well, I've been wanting to do this video for a while about the Smith Miller trucks and show kind of a timeline of their evolution and show how to approximately date them. The reason I wanted to do this is because there isn't a whole lot of information on the internet about Smith Miller trucks, their variations, the years that they were sold new. There isn't very much at all on that. So I'm going to try to kind of do my best to fill that in a little bit. So today we're going to start with this Coca-Cola. This is what's known as a Chevy cab. This is actually the second generation of Smith Miller. We're starting here because Failure doesn't have a first generation. First generation had a different cab. It was known as the Ford cab, had a more Ford-like looking grille. But this is known as the Chevy cab, and it's got the headlights molded into the fenders, and the grille is different than the GMC. This, I believe, was available primarily in 1946. Some folks say they may have come out at the end of 45. And then one of the ways to identify these, besides the Chevy cab, is the small hubcaps. These have solid rubber tires with a very small center hubcap. I actually prefer this hubcap to the later one. Also, a way to identify it, these early ones, this decal said Smitty Toys. The Fords and the Chevys had the Smitty Toy decal on the door. Sometime probably late 46, early 47, they switched. This is known as the GMC cab. It's got the all horizontal grille, some more definition, different headlights basically, right? And then big hubcaps. And the original ones, I think, all said SM. Some of the modern day aftermarket replacements are just smooth. But I think you can kind of see that says SM. So that would be an original. And then at the same time, they switched the door decal to say Smith Miller. So the trucks looked like this pretty much for most of 47 and 1948. In 1949, the big change was a change to this aluminum wheel with a press-on rubber tire. Got rid of the solid rubber tire with the hubcap. So this was the big change, 1949. And the GMCs stayed like this with very little change until the very end of the run. They kept selling the GMCs, I believe, all the way through or nearly all the way through. And the only change they made to them after this was they actually changed the wheels. And I'll show that in a minute. Next, I believe in 1950, they released the first L-Mack. This is an early L-Mack 5051, and the way to identify that is these bumpers didn't have any braces in here, and they were notorious for breaking off. Kids would smash them into things, break the end of the bumper off. And then the other way to identify it is the longer fuel tanks. So this one would be a 1950 or 1951 L-Mack, longer fuel tanks, no bumper braces. Those are the common things you see. Still the same Smith Miller door decal. The other thing that you see, this is a radiator cap version. Some of these have bulldogs instead of a radiator cap. I think that is not really quite as common as most people think. There's not as many bulldogs around, I think, as most people like to believe. Most people will put bulldogs on them. I think my collector guide said only the earliest ones have the bulldog. My experience on the street is the fire trucks mostly seem to have the bulldog. A lot of the other ones do not. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but that's my experience on the street. So one more little variation here. Why is this truck tipped on its side? Well, as you can see, the frame underneath the cabin is open. Underneath the cab, I'm sorry. It's open, okay? I believe this to be a very, very, very early 1950 L-Mack. I don't know how long they ran production with that frame like that, but I'm guessing not all that long. And it could have been, honestly, it could have been most of 1950. I don't really know for sure. And then I'll show you on this one. So see how that's filled in now? It's all solid. It's more or less the same, but it's filled in solid. So that's another way to know on the frames. You got two variations right here, and this will actually be the third. So this would be a 52, 53 L-Mack. You can see now they have put the bumper braces in here. These still broke off at an alarming rate, but it was an improvement. And then they shortened the fuel tanks. So those are two things. Still the same sticker on the cab. Still the same aluminum wheels that they came out with in 49 for the GMCs. And then underneath of this one, now they have an oil pan cast into the frame. Just gave it a little bit more detail. So this is, the three ways you can tell the later frames: bumper braces, oil pan, short fuel tanks. Okay. Next, in 54, they came out with the B-Mack. So obviously, completely different cab, completely different frame, same door decal. This one doesn't have much, but this is the only B-Mack that I have. B-Mack's 1 year only, so pretty hard to find. They also changed it to the 5-spoke wheel, and some of them, I believe, have a different tire. So these L-Macks all have this herringbone tire, all of them. But this one has the herringbone tire, but I think it's an early one. Some of the later ones, I think, said Smith Miller on the sidewall for one thing. And then I mentioned earlier that the GMCs had a late change. So I believe also in 54, they started running this wheel on the GMC. So it'll be 5-spoke instead of the 4, like the early GMCs had. So if you see the GMC with the 5-spoke, it's probably a 54. So that was a thing. And then finally, there's a Miller Ironson company. This was, I don't know all of the history on this, but I believe Miller started to split off from Smith. He started this company, came out with this truck. They're recognized basically as being the same, even though it's a completely different truck, because I think they patched it up before they completely split up. So this MIC truck, I believe, is also 54 only. The B-Mack and the MIC, I think they actually might have gone into 55 a little while, but somewhere in there late 54, maybe as late as mid 55, they just closed the doors to the company one day. So several differences here. You can see the MIC has its own unique wheel. It has more of a street tread type tire and its own wheel. Now, I think it's also kind of a thing. I think my boy's B-Mack has MIC wheels, if I remember right. And that's a thing I've seen before a few times. So I don't know if some of them may have left the factory with the wheels mixed up, or if somebody changed them later on down the road. I'm not really for sure, but it's a thing that I've seen more than one of. So anyway, these trucks, 54, maybe into 55, don't know how far into 55, but these were the last two that were sold more or less at the same time, and then also with the GMC cab over still at the same time. But the L-Macks went away. So anyway, there are your major changes in the Smith-Miller line and the approximate dates to the best of my knowledge. So, and then again, I might be wrong on a couple things. I might be a little off on a couple things. I don't really consider myself an expert, but there is just so little information on these trucks on the internet that I thought I have most of the variations. Really, the only one I'm missing is the first one, the Ford. So I thought I would give folks a little guide to go by. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to try to answer them to the best of my ability. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on Failure at Retirement. Have a good day.